Hi everyone. I wanted to for you to get out your brief Penguin Handbook and go over some of the information from it. If you have the fourth edition, that's obviously more advantageous. But if you have a previous edition, it's not going to cause you much difficulty. What I wanted you to do though is when you look inside of the handbook, on the inside cover, they have a brief table of contents and they explain to you what is inside of this handbook. Now, when you look in the back part of the book, I wanted to point out a couple of items to you. In the very back, they have a glossary of key terms and so on. And the glossary of key terms, if you go to page 561, if I use different terms like active voice or passive voice or a fragment or a run on and so on, you can definitely look it up in here and it explains those terms. A little bit further along on page 573, there is an index. And so certainly refer to the index. And then I do not use these, but there is right near the very end of the book, there is a revision guide. So take a look at that because it has words, sentences, and paragraphs, punctuation, and mechanics. And then at the very end, like right here on this last page, there's a listing of common errors like of grammar, of punctuation, and so on, especially under grammar with comma splices, which are on page 404, fragments, which are on page 397, run on sentences, which are on page 401. Those are very, very common. And then they also have capitalization and mechanics, especially people have problems with the apostrophe, which is on page 493, and then also quotations, which are on page 500, and then even like they talk about colons and so on. And then if you open this up, they have an even more detailed table of contents in the back. The front part of the book gives you a general table of contents, but the back breaks it down much, much more specifically. And what I would tell you is when you are done with this college writing course, do not get rid of this handbook. Keep it, use it, and refer to it. Now, you can always use the online writing lab at Purdue University, which is owl.english.purdue.edu. And that has much helpful information, but I like to have a paper version of the handbook to refer to. And what I'd like you to do is if you have your handbook, I just wanted to point through the different aspects of it. Tab 1, which is the aqua blue tab on planning, drafting, and revising, that talks about brainstorming. It talks about creating your first draft, revising your draft, that sort of thing. And that's very, very helpful because just like when you plan for a house, you also have to plan for your writing in a consistent, even handed way and think it through. Writing is more of a messy process when you start out, but then as you work through it, it gets easier and easier. But at the start, just like I said, when you design a house, when you start to think about if you wanted a new home, what would you like? You have all these ideas, and then eventually you start to, narrow it down. Tab 2 under analyzing, reflecting, informing, and arguing. Take a look at that when you can, but it talks more about advancing your writing, taking it another step, but especially on page 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41, they talk about becoming a critical reader. In other words, reading your writing, taking your time with it, proofreading it, editing it, and so on. But even in your professions, this writing class not only teaches you how to write better, but it teaches you how to read better because we do some exams where you have to read essays closer. I have you revise and edit your writing. We do discussion board postings. And with those, I expect you to develop good, strong solid reading skills. If you can, while you're taking this class, I would suggest that you read a daily newspaper, because we're going to be doing an argumentative paper, for example. When we do this argumentative paper, it's good to know what are some of the key issues and key arguments that are being discussed today. For example, is national health care a good thing or a bad thing? I saw in the local newspaper today, is Sunday hunting good or bad? Should all motorcyclists in the state of Pennsylvania be required to wear a motorcycle helmet? Should all motorcycle riders be required to take a motorcycle safety class? Should all parents who have their first child be required to take an infant CPR and an infant first aid class before they take a child home from the hospital? Should that be required? That's a controversial issue. And Sunday hunting, is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Should the state stores in the state of Pennsylvania become privatized? Would that be positive or negative? Since we are going into legalized gambling more, is that good or bad for our state? And of course, like Marcellus Shell, is that good or bad for the state? Is it good or bad for our water supply? Is homeschooling good or bad? So those are types of some of the issues to think about. Tab 3 on writing in the disciplines, that covers like writing in psychology or in sociology, in some of the science courses and so on. Tab 4 is a purple tab on designing and presenting, and I can't tell you how critical it is to look at that, because it talks about using visuals in your writing, which makes your writing more engaging and more focused. And so it also talks about reading and analyzing visual data and drawing conclusions from it. So that's very, very important. Tab 5 talks about planning, research, and finding sources. And not only finding sources, but finding high quality, effective sources. And of course, they talk about primary research, which is research that you would do on your own, such as interviews, which we are going to do some of that this semester, surveys, questionnaires, and so on. And also secondary research, which would be, the internet databases such as EBSCOhost or LexisNexis, or encyclopediabritannica.com, which is available through our library site, Opposing Viewpoints, which is available through our library website. Those are really, really quite good. In this class, if you use Google, what I would encourage you to do is when you go to Google, type Google directory, and then it will subcategorize Google into smaller categories, such as non-traditional medicine. They'll break medicine down into different categories, chiropractic medicine, Chinese medicine, things like that. So it narrows the scope down. In Google, when you search, you only will find the most used information first. So they won't give you information based on reliability. They'll give you the ones that are referred to or used the most. So that's something to keep in mind. There's also Google Scholar. And so when you go into Google, you can type Google Scholar, and it'll help you to find journals and trade publications. So that's actually quite good, to use. Do not use Wikipedia in this class or any classes as far as for sources in your paper. It's not a reliable source. You can use it to refer to or look at, but I would not encourage the use of Wikipedia at all. Tab number 6, incorporating and documenting sources. They cover that in our handbook, and they cover this the same in our textbook as well. I like to refer to the handbook because it's easier to use. We're going to be using the MLA, or the Modern Language Association tab, and you can see that next. That is the most commonly used form of documentation, but please be aware that as of 2009 they updated it, and so you can refer to that in our textbook and in our handbook rather, and see that. The APA is American Psychological Association, which is the next tab. That is used in sociology, psychology. Those are the social sciences, as well as the natural sciences such as biology, chemistry. They're used in nursing and allied health. It is a slightly different style of documentation. And after you're done with this class, I want you to be, aware of what both of them are about. Under effective style and language, that talks about making your sentences more accurate and more specific. It talks about editing. It talks about using transition words. Many useful tips in there in effective style and language. Under understanding grammar, tab the rate, that brown tab. Of course, that would be like run-on sentences, comma splices, few sentences, and so on. That's probably one of the sections you want to refer to the most. Number 9 is punctuation and mechanics, which we're going to be practicing on the semicolon, the colon, the dash, the proper use of the comma, and so on. So those are the main ones that I wanted to refer you to and to be aware of. Now, what I'm going to do on my computer screen right now is go to a place that I want you to become familiar with. When you go to the mywccc.edu, on the right side of the page, there will be something that says Access Blackboard, and of course you can access Blackboard that way. There will be a web advisor. Go down a little bit more and you'll see Applications. Click on that, and you're going to click on My Labs Plus, okay? And what it'll do is it'll tell you, welcome to Pearson My Labs Plus. If you bought a new book for this class, for the handbook and the textbook, you will have a card that will come with your book. What you can do then is, for your name and password, you can use your WCCC ID for both of those, and you can click and log in. Now, the first time that you do log in, they are going to ask you for that access code, and so it's like 15 digits, and it's like numbers and letters, and you'll type that in, and then you'll be able to go into this consistently and use it. And I do want you to use this, My Comp Lab, because I feel it's really useful, and there's some definite benefit to it. But what I wanted to tell you too is, when you go in on the left side, it'll say like syllabus support, and there's one that says Pearson eText. And when you click on that, you can open your Brief Penguin Handbook in the electronic version, and so all of the information that you can get through the print version of the handbook, you can access it there. But I'm going to have you do like a pre-test, which are a series of questions. There are about 35 to 50 questions each, but there's 3 of them that I want you to do at the beginning of the class, and then I want you to complete those by the middle of October. And then there's ones that I want you to do as we get to the end of the class to see how well you progressed. But this My Comp Lab, like I said, is very good. And you can go into yours and it'll say to do on the left. You can click on that and then you can complete those. And then when you're done, they'll be put into this grade book. And then once you complete them, then I'll put them into the Blackboard grade book. But I just wanted to let you know that. And then also too, one other point that I wanted to mention to you, as far as in the composing section, if you want to, you can practice brainstorming here and so on. And there is even a way of, if you wanted to, you can submit your papers to have a editor look at them. It says tutor when you click on the writer's toolkit, and you have to fill out some information, but you can submit up to 6 papers in a year to that particular area. And it goes through writing tips, samples, grammar editing, and so on, MLA guidelines, APA guidelines, and so on. So it's pretty useful to do. I am running out of time. I only have 15 minutes for this, so I just wanted to make you aware of some of the resources, and hopefully this proves to be useful. But make sure to keep this handbook, refer to it in this class, and use it on down the road. And of course, you have access to the My Comp Lab for 1 year from the date that you start using it for this class. So that's it. Thank you.